Most people know that the average American is fat and sick, but most people are not aware that the average American is also broke. New data on household debt was just released, and Americans now have $1 trillion in credit card debt. That is an all-time high. And even worse, the average credit card balance for American households is now at $10,000. Real quick, a word from today's sponsor, Monetary Metals. Gold has been a hedge against inflation and failing currencies for thousands of years. But one of the biggest objections to investing in gold is that it just sits there. It has no yield. But what if you could earn a yield on your gold? That's exactly what Monetary Metals is here to do. But how? Monetary Metals connects your ounces to companies that need physical inventory, jewelers, mints, refineries, mines, etc., which means you can earn between 2 and 4% on your gold and silver. And if you're an accredited investor, you are eligible to earn even higher yields, such as 19% on a recent offering. Just to be clear, if you start off the year at 100 ounces and you're earning 3%, at the end of the year, you have 103 ounces. Regardless of what the price of the metal does, you're not giving up any access to the price gains or the price losses. Simply, your ounces are growing. It's genius, it's a win-win, and it's incredibly innovative. Now, as you might imagine, I had many questions about the details of how Monetary Metals does this. So I spent the last year talking with them, grilling them, and I became good friends with the CEO and founder, Keith Weiner. After making sure it was legit, I opened up an account with them myself, and I'll be using their services to grow my ounces. I've also spent quite some time now asking them, please let me advertise for you. And I'm the first one they've ever sponsored. They've never done any paid advertising up until this point, but I finally convinced them and they gave in. To get started, you can either buy metal directly from them and put it to work, or you can ship to them metal that you already own. It's time to get on your own personal gold standard. Earn gold, denominated in gold, priced in gold, and most importantly, paid in gold. For more information, in order to get started with opening up an account, visit the link in the description below. It is absolutely imperative right now, more important than it's ever been, that you get out of debt. This is because interest rates are skyrocketing. During the years of 2019 through 2022, interest rates were around 15% on credit cards. But for the last year, credit card interest rates have been skyrocketing to the point where now the average rate on a new credit card is 24%. And the average rate on all cards is 20%. And the fact of the matter is that this isn't going away anytime soon. Americans are very quickly getting trapped into a cycle of paying off their minimum payments, watching those minimum payments climb, and their principal balance just stays the same. They can barely afford to pay their minimum payment, let alone try and make any progress on actually getting out of debt. For the average American who owes $10,000 at 24% interest, it will take them until April of 2030 to become debt-free. That is 7 years. And on top of that, you're not just paying the $10,000 that you borrowed. Because of that high interest rate, they'll end up in the end paying $20,000 in total. Those are some expensive trips to Costco. Now, here's the reality. Debt is slavery. If you don't control your money controls you. And when you have debt, you are chained to decisions. You are being forced to take actions that you probably wouldn't take otherwise, simply because you must pay those payments. When you are in debt, it means money is in control of you. You are a slave to money, not in control over it. And I'm speaking from somebody who knows what that feels like. When my wife and I got married, we had $30,000 of debt, and together we were making just about $35,000 per year. We were in a big financial hole. I know what it feels like to not be able to go to sleep at night because you don't know how you're gonna pay the bills. It's not a fun place to be in, which is why I know how important it is that you get out of debt as fast as possible. And today, the average American family income is $80,000. So if the average American family pulls in 80 grand and has 10 grand of credit card debt, that is not an insurmountable obstacle. That is something that is achievable. It may take time to get there, but that time is gonna pass anyway. So might as well be where you wanna be once that time has passed. The reality is there is such a thing as good debt and there is such a thing as bad debt. And it's very simple to determine the difference between the two. If you spent the money on something that goes away and disappears and then you have to buy it again, that's gonna be bad debt. It's gonna be your clothes, it's gonna be your cars, it's gonna be toys, it's gonna be food. Don't use debt for those things because in the end, you're just paying more for those things because of the interest rate for borrowing for that expense. But if you can use that debt for one of two things, then it might be good debt. If you can use debt to buy something that makes you money, then it's an asset. The way that you do the calculation is it going to pay you more than all of your expenses even after paying for the debt? So like a rental property, if the rental property with the mortgage costs $700 a month and you make $1,000 a month, you net $300, that's good debt. The other thing to take into consideration is the inflation rate. So you have debt that costs you 3% and the inflation rate is 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9%, then that's probably good debt too. So if you've got a mortgage that's a 3% interest rate, that means you borrowed money and you're paying it back with money that is worth less. That's probably good debt. I wouldn't be in a rush to get rid of that. But your 24% interest rate on your credit card certainly doesn't fit any of those categories. Now, regardless of how hard the decisions are that you have to make, it is worth it to get out of debt. When my wife and I got married, like I said, we were making $35,000 together and we had $30,000 worth of debt. That ratio is an extremely big hole to dig yourself out of. So step number one was, well, we had to address the income side of the issue because two people making 35 together is about as bad as it can get. So I got a job that paid a lot more and ultimately we started making 75 together instead of what we were making before. And now we had income left over to be able to attack our debt problem. And that's where step number two comes in, which is the hard choices. And this is where everybody in your life is going to tell you you're crazy. They're going to tell you live in moderation, live a little bit. You're being too extreme. You have to still be able to enjoy your life. And let me tell you, these people do not want the best for you. If they're telling you to be normal and stop living so extreme, which is making your life better, then all they're doing is feeling insecure about how shitty their lives are and telling you you need to make choices that are more like them so they don't feel as bad about the lack of progress that they made. They'll tell you it's just a couple $100 more for this. It's just a little bit of money for that. Live a little bit. No, you've made bad decisions in the past. You need to correct it. And the faster you can correct it, the faster you will be free. Do not listen to anybody who does not want that for you. It's a season. Make hard choices and your life will be way better very soon as a result. It was because of those hard choices that my wife and I made to live in a terrible area of town and not buy things. We didn't even have Wi-Fi. We didn't even have internet. We just used our phones for internet and used hotspots when we wanted to use our computer. Literally did not spend any money on anything but survival, and we paid off 30 grand in 9 months and we're debt free. Guess what that allowed us to do? When my son was born, my wife could quit her job and be a stay-at-home mom. We had already paid off the debt, so we didn't have the shackles to a job causing that slavery over us, and we could make the free choices that we wanted to make. It also, number two, built the foundation of those disciplines necessary, because obviously when she became a stay-at-home mom, we were making a lot less money, but we already had the practice. That was easy. We knew how to live on a lot less, and we could choose to do so because we were free. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we hadn't become debt-free first. Also, the next thing it allowed us to do is years later allowed me to quit my job and start my business. If we were loaded up with a bunch of auto loans and a mortgage and a bunch of credit card debt, I've never been able to quit my job and start my business like I had always wanted to. But because we were free and because I didn't have those shackles to my job, we were able to take that leap. And guess what? We went to zero income from my great income at the time. And what that did was force us back into those same old habits of spending a lot less, of sticking to the budget, of living on a lot less and not spending money on those flashy things and everything, all the shackles we were used to living on less and sticking to that budget when we needed to, we could choose to, and we were able to do that. So getting out of debt by itself, it's not not going to make you rich. And anybody who claims otherwise is a fool. You cannot save your way to wealth. But getting out of debt will certainly turn you into the type of person and help you build the skills necessary to get you where you want to go, to become wealthy in the future. So getting out of debt will not make you rich, but staying in debt will absolutely keep you poor. Now, most people who are deep in debt, they think the problem is an income problem. They go from making 50 grand a year to a few years later making 100 grand a year, a few years later making 150 grand a year, and all that happens is they end up having more and more debt. This is the same reason why so many professional athletes go broke. Like 78% of NFL players who have to file for bankruptcy within 2 years of retiring, or 60% of NBA players who file for bankruptcy within 5 years. It's the same reason why the federal government runs larger and larger deficits every year, despite pulling in record larger amounts of taxes every year. It's not an income problem, it's a spending problem. Now, if you're making an extremely small amount of money, then you may need to address the income side of the equation first. Maybe you need to get a promotion. Ask the superior of the job that you want. What do I have to do? And then do it. Maybe you need a second, or maybe you need a third job. Maybe you need to do a side hustle. Maybe you need a career change. So you need to learn some skills, do some online boot camps, and gain some skills that are very valuable to new employers and get a new job. But I challenge you to look at the situation with reality and say, hey, is this an income problem or is this an expenses problem? Has my income gone up and my spending goes up faster? And more likely than not, more often than not, you're going to find, hey, the real problem lies in the spending habits. So here's the exact plan that you can take to get out of debt faster than anybody else you've ever known, leaving behind all the normies in the dust. Number one, you're going to want to save up an emergency savings account that has 1 month's worth of expenses. Don't stick to $1,000. Don't stick to 6 months or 3 months worth of expenses. 1 month. If an emergency happens, you will be able to survive and pay your necessary bills for 1 month until you get a new source of income, a new job, something else. That is plenty of money. And likely you already have that in a savings account somewhere. So check that box off the list. Move on to step number 2. Step number 2 is to make a budget. Now, the way that you do this is by first collecting your statements from the last couple of months for all your credit cards and all of your bank accounts. You need to look at literally every single transaction that you've ever spent over the last 3 months and categorize them so you can take a realistic look at where you're at. I guarantee you spend 2 to 3 times more on groceries than you knew, on clothes, on entertainment, on eating out, on drinks. All of these categories, this is why you have a debt problem, because you have a spending problem. You're spending way more than you realize. I'd put money on it. And so you need to categorize this and you need to see, oh, I thought I was spending $300 a month on restaurants. I'm spending $1,000 a month on restaurants. I thought I was spending $500 a month on groceries. I'm spending $1,200 a month on groceries. You need to get an accurate assessment of where your money is going. Collect your statements, write it all down, put it into categories. Use Excel. Don't worry about the budgeting software, they're not worth it. Once you know where you're at, where your money is going, cut out every single expense that does not result in your survival. You don't need new clothes. You don't need the name brand food. Maybe you don't even need as much food. Maybe you're, a little bit on the heavy side and you need to go on a diet anyway. Hey, there's an area you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Eat less food, eat less processed food, because that's going to be more expensive per calorie. And hey, you save a lot of money in the process. So you're going to slash every single expense that does not result in survival. And every single dollar that's left over from there, you're going to use to pay off your debt. Now, regarding the credit cards, do not cancel your credit cards. Do not actually call them up and cancel them unless you're like a degenerate gambler with your debt and you are just an addict and you cannot resist. It'll hurt your credit if you do that. So you probably don't want to cancel those credit cards unless you are absolutely sure that that is necessary. Otherwise, throw them in the shredder so that you don't use them and just leave the accounts open while you pay them off. The method you should go in order of which debts to attack first depends on your personality. I call these machine versus animal. If you are a non-emotional person and you're just a machine, you decide you're going to do something and you do it, then pay them off in order of highest interest to lowest interest. So disregard anything but put them in order of, hey, this is the highest interest rate debt that I have all the way to lowest, and pay them off in that order. You'll get it done a little bit quicker. If you're more like an animal, a little bit more influenced by emotion, like this is me, pay them off in order of balance size. And so if you've got $100 balance on one, pay that one off first. It's going to give you a little dopamine hit. It's going to give you that encouragement and that momentum that you need to keep on going. If you're fueled by emotion, if you're a little bit more volatile, if you're a little bit higher in neuroticism, use that to your advantage. Be an animal, attack it. Do it that way and you'll have much more success. You won't get discouraged early on like the machine would. And then finally, do not ever worry about any of those consolidation services. Most of those are scams. They're going to hurt your credit. A lot of them will look like a bankruptcy anyway. At the most, what you should do is see if you can get a balance transfer to like a 0% introductory rate and go from paying 24% down to 0% for like a year and say, okay, that gives us a year to pay it off. Every dollar we throw at this thing is just hitting the principal. So that's a great way to attack it a little bit faster. Right now, there's probably not a lot of those offers available to you. So that probably won't be it. And just recognize in the end, it's about the grind, not the gimmicks. Getting out of debt is about doing the necessary work, putting in the steps, putting in the actions. It's not about the tricks. It's not about the gimmicks. It's not about those secret hacks with your credit reports and these companies that say, hey, you have to pay us $1,000 and we'll help you fix your credit. No, just get out of debt. Just pay it off as quickly as possible. Be a machine or be an animal, whichever one fits you. Slash your expenses down to survival and stop being average, because average is miserable, fat, and broke. And if you never get out of debt, it will absolutely keep you in the poorhouse. If you do get out of debt, it will turn you into the type of person who has what it takes to start becoming wealthy. Now, I have an in-depth course on getting out of debt, becoming debt-free, that goes over the exact process, steps, the system that I used, tools like actual budgets, spreadsheets, things like that. And it goes much deeper, in-depth on all the topics that we hit in this video. If you are interested in taking that course, that will be launching on the membership program, my Heresy Financial University, shortly here. So if you sign up for Heresy Financial University with the link in the description below as a member, you'll get first access to that brand new course on slashing and crushing your debt as fast as possible. So check that out below. As always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.